In today's Leeds news, Betis worried about Roca deal, Meslier feels like he failed, youth update, and the latest on the compensation claim against Everton. Hi folks, Jer here on Wednesday the 22nd of November with your Leeds news. Daniel Farke's press conference has just finished. We are not going to cover that in today's news. We're going to keep that as part of the match preview stuff that will go out on Friday. So just news stories today, and we're going to crack on. There's three kind of large stories with a bit of chunky detail in them, so we're not going to hang around. We'll get into these. There'll be a bit of looking down on this one, because it's just a lot of detail that I can't memorise. But we'll start off with the Real Betis one, and they are worried about the possibility of not being able to complete a Marc Roca deal. We've been talking over the last couple of months an awful lot how happy Betis are with Marc Roca there and their desire to make the deal permanent if they can. There's been talk of a double deal that's been in place for next season to make sure that he can go back to Betis, but now things look like they might be changing. Roca is one of the few players that is out on loan and having a very, very good season, so much so that he was recalled to the Spanish national side as a reward for his performances. He's been called out as a standout player for Betis this season outside of the odd one or two games, and has been playing very, very well over there. Roca himself has spoken of his desire to remain in Spain and how happy he is being back in Spain and playing for Betis. Now reports from Spain are claiming that Betis are worried they might not be in a position to make the deal permanent. If Leeds don't go up, Betis have a deal in place with Leeds to go for a second loan season. That's part of the loan agreements that Leeds have with these players that are out currently on loan. Those deals would still be active if Leeds don't get promoted. So Betis have an agreement that would trigger this loan for a second season, meaning Marc Roca would stay there. However, if Leeds get promoted, the deal is that Betis will have an option to buy on Roca and would complete a permanent move for Roca, bringing him to Betis. However, it now seems that they might not be in a position to do so. According to Mucho Deporte, they are claiming that Roca is at risk of returning to Leeds, is how they phrased it, because of the high cost of the option to buy, which I believe is between 10 and 12 million pounds. And Betis are said to not be in a particularly good financial situation currently. Other twists in this are sources close to Marc Roca have stated that he expects to not come back to Leeds at all, and this was reported on in The Athletic earlier last week. And remember that there is this double deal in place. If Leeds stay down in the Championship, that automatically triggers a loan deal for Roca back to Betis next season. If Leeds get promoted, then Betis would have the option to buy Marc Roca on a permanent deal, but they are now saying that might not be able to happen because Betis might not be in a position where they can complete the deal. We have seen similar stuff with this last year with Diego Llorente at Roma, where there was an option to buy the player in the summer, and then when it came to the summer, Roma didn't have the funds to make that deal, and because Leeds got relegated, they were in a position where they could get the player on loan instead for the season, with no option to buy on that as well. So these clubs are making lots of deals to bring Leeds players in on loan with these options there, that it now appears they're not actually in a financial position where they can make the deals permanent if they do get the option, which is an odd position to be in. Roca is having a very, very good season. He's doing very well over there, but it is very unlikely to see Marc come back. He is having a very good time in Spain, and he does seem happier now being back in his native land, which is kind of understandable to a degree. You know, some players just don't work when they're outside their own country. You know, the distance away from family, and that can be tough. So it's a tricky one. Moving on, speaking of tricky things, Illan Meslier's season last season, and I suppose the back of why he's had a season this year, he's been talking to Leeds live exclusively, and he says that he feels like he has failed with Leeds, and he might again fail in the future. Meslier was speaking with the publication exclusively, and in the interview he talked about his arrival at Leeds as a ball-playing goalkeeper, and then the arrival of Sam Allardyce, who is not known for his on-the-ground ball-playing style, and his subsequent dropping from the team. Meslier discussed that his removal from the team was hard, and it did have a big impact on him as well. But he said last season wasn't easy for anyone. He said it was tough, and the mindset was that he wanted to have was that he is still learning as a goalkeeper, and this is part of that. He said that he feels like he has failed, and maybe will fail again, but that the reaction is what's important, and to improve and learn from that and try and get better. On the relegation, he said that it wasn't easy for anyone at the club, but relegation is part of football, and it is something that can happen, so you have to be ready for that and prepare for it. He said that he's still here because he wants to right a few wrongs, and in this he basically goes on to say that there was an option to leave Leeds and that he doesn't want to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. He did consider leaving Leeds, but sitting on the bench for another club was not something he wanted to do. He wants to play and he wants to right the wrongs of last season and do it with Leeds United. He said the reason he's still at Leeds is because he wants to get promoted with Leeds and put Leeds back in the Premier League, where he believes and everyone else believes Leeds belong, and that is our place is the Premier League, is what he has said. He's gone on to talk about that it wasn't good for him to leave, that there was no point in him leaving at that point, and he also says that sometimes leaving a club after a relegation is selfish, and he didn't want to be selfish, and that he wanted to right the wrongs, and he said it just wasn't something he wanted to do, was to leave Leeds in the position that Leeds were in at that point. He's been excellent since he's come in. There was a £20 million bid rejected for him. There was plenty of interest in the player in the summer. A lot of stuff's come out in the wash over the last couple of months, but he's had a very, very good season for us this year, and he's shown the kind of form that he showed in the first year in the Premier League and the year we got promoted as well. He's a very, very young goalkeeper. I keep saying this. Goalkeepers don't tend to peak till they're in their late 20s, early 30s. This guy's still in his very early 20s, so it's 10 years maybe before the best of Meslier has ever seen. I keep saying this, but people, I wouldn't be in a rush to kick young players out of the club. They develop at different ages, and Meslier has been fine this season. I mean, the save that he made against Leicester in the last minute shows the calibre of a goalkeeper that he is. Getting hammered every single week and being exposed to the amount of shots that he was exposed to over the last 2 years with a defence that never really protected him doesn't help a goalkeeper. But this year, with a better defence in front of him, less shots facing, he's been able to deal with the ones that he has had to save, because he's dealing with less frequent shots, I suppose. So it's an interesting read. I highly recommend go check that out on Leeds Live. It is an exclusive with them, and it's worth a read. It's a bit longer than the detail I've gone into there, but there you go. We'll move on now. We'll talk about the Youth International update. Real quick one on this. Jeremiah Mullen played 90 minutes for Scotland in their under-21 0-0 draw with Hungary, and Willie Gnonto scored twice in Italy's under-21 2-2 draw with Ireland yesterday. A very, very late equaliser in that game. A little bit of controversy, a 97-minute equaliser, which caused a bit of aggro down in Cork in Ireland yesterday. But great for Willie to get 2 more goals under his belt and keep building up the minutes. Hopefully come back into the team now in a situation for the weekend where he can come in and make an impact. Very unlikely he'll be involved in the start on Friday because he only played yesterday. But very, very, very possible he'll get chances over Christmas, and the more minutes he gets, the sharper he will be. Moving on to the last story and the big one that everyone wants to talk about, and that is the FFP situation and the legal case against Everton now that they have been found guilty of breaches of financial fair play. Whatever any pundit wants to say about it being fair or otherwise, they broke the rules by 3 times the amount they were supposed to or allowed to, and now they're facing the consequences. But news in the past few days of the next stages of the compensation claim have started to come out in the press after Everton were found guilty of the FFP breaches. A report in the national newspaper states that the independent commission made up of David Phillips KC, Alan Greenwood and Nick Igo, which handled the initial decision around the points deduction for Everton, will also be the same panel that handle any potential legal cases against Everton. Leeds, Burnley and Leicester are all bringing a case against Everton for a potential £100 million each, total volume of 300, but they have now been joined by Southampton and Forest in this claim against Everton, who will be joining in for financial compensation as a result of Everton gaining an advantage by breaking the financial fair play rules. The grounds for the claim for Leeds specifically have nothing to do with Leeds' relegation from the Premier League, and that needs to be made clear. What they actually relate to is the finishing position for Leeds where they ended up. If Everton's point deduction had gone through last year, Leeds would still have gone down, but they would have finished 1 place higher in the division, which would have meant an additional £2.2 million for Leeds in income from the Premier League, because the higher you finish, the more money you get in the Premier League. That's the way it works. However, there are some changes in this. The commission led by Phillips previously said that he believed that the clubs would have a case against Everton for compensation, but said that the cases for compensation would be handled separately and away from the previous case of the EPL punishment for financial fair play breaches. Leicester and Burnley are slightly different in this situation. They could earn up to £50 million each in compensation as a result of their relegations from the Premier League. Had Everton's point deduction been applied in either of the last 2 seasons when the breaches happened, then Leicester and Burnley would not have been relegated and Everton would have been relegated, which means Leicester and Burnley spending a year out of the Premier League was lost earnings of in and around or up to £50 million, potentially going over that again. The rough figure estimated to be around £100 million per year being in the Premier League, but they will still get parachute payments, so that'll be taken away from that. So that's the case. That Forest and Southampton are in there as well. Again, similar case to Leeds about money. So it might not be a case that Everton pay 300 million in compensation here. It could be a case that's 100 million between Burnley and Leicester, then an additional 2.5 for Leeds, an additional 2.5 for Forest, and an additional 2.5 for Southampton as well. So it's a lot of money. Everton have been said that they won't be in a position to pay these compensation claims should they be agreed. And 777 partners who are buying the club would pull out of their deal to buy Everton and have a caveat in place that allows them to walk away from the deal if there is a previous financial situation, which is what this is previous to their time. They won't be paying that debt back. So that will force Everton potentially into administration, which would see them get an additional 9 points deduction. They can complain, Jamie Carragher can talk about it, they can all go publicly and say they can bring it to the House in England, they can do whatever they want, but the black and white situation is here. Everton broke financial fair play rules. They trebled the amount of losses they're allowed to have. They can talk about COVID being a contributing factor to this, but then Leeds and every other club in this also went through COVID and didn't breach the rules by that amount of money and managed to stay within them. You can't just spend money. I saw a guy yesterday talk about the stadium as well, that they shouldn't be punished for the stadium. Stadium development, youth development, none of that is included in financial fair play. You can spend money on that and it's not taken into consideration. The difference for Everton is they borrowed money, a loan, for the stadium, and that's been taken into consideration as a loan because not all of that money was for the stadium. So they've kind of put themselves into a hole of spending money that they don't have, and currently 777 partners are funding the club with a loan to equity position of £20 million per month. Everton been linked with a ton of players. Some of them are Leeds. They're just not going to be in a position to buy these players. They shouldn't be in a position to buy players if they're potentially looking at administration coming down the line as well. Every penny they have should be saved. So it's a position they put themselves into by bad financial management, spending money on players that didn't make an impact for them, and bad decisions over the last couple of years. I don't remember anybody standing up and fighting Leeds' case when Leeds were deducted 15 points, which was a record at the time when Leeds got deducted 15 points at the start of the League One season, which really hamstrung Leeds. So you break the rules, there are punishments in place, you can give out and say it's not fair, and fans related to that club will always say it's not fair, but the black and white of it is, I don't remember anybody standing up and backing Leeds when they were going through financial troubles. In fact, most of the clubs wanted Leeds out of the league. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts, and Everton are having their moment where everybody is now looking at getting an advantage over mistakes that they have made. But they made the mistakes and they have to live with them. And that's pretty much going to be it for me today, folks. As I said, a bit longer than normal, but 3 pretty big stories with lots and lots of detail. Love to know your opinions on all 3 stories as well if you want to let me know in the comments. And I'll be back tomorrow morning with more Leeds news. And a reminder that Friday we will have the match day preview for the game on Friday night against Rotherham. Have a great day. I'll talk to you later. Bye.